is Carly McAvoy, and we're going to be working in ABE 064 today. This is the third lesson, which is subtraction. When we're talking about subtraction, there's some terminology that you definitely want to get to know. If you have a subtraction problem, let's say 19 minus 7, which is 12, each of those parts has a name. The number on the top is called the minuend. The second number that you're taking away from that top number is called the subtrahend. And the answer to a subtraction problem is called the difference. The other parts of that problem are the operator, or the operation, and the equal sign. So when it's in this format, this is your equal sign. So it's not really an equal sign, because in true definition, an equal sign is this, right? And we don't really see an equal sign in this problem, but that bar indicates an equal sign. We can call it an equivalent symbol. An equivalent symbol, which is like an equal sign. It's just a different way to look at it. And so we could call this an equivalent symbol also, the equal sign. And then we also have this operator. Or operation, which in this case is subtraction. So all of those parts have a name. I could write a problem in this format: 12 minus 6 equals 6. And then I would say that the equal sign is right there. That's also could be called an equivalent symbol. And the operator is right here, and that is your subtraction sign in this case. And then the other three numbers are the minuend, the subtrahend, and the difference. The first number, or the number you're taking away from, is your minuend. So if I'm going to label those minuend, subtrahend, and difference. So on your paper, when you're labeling them, just draw little arrows or write them just beside there so that you know that your instructor can tell which number you intended to be the minuend, which one you intended to be the subtrahend, and which one you intended to be the difference. When you're looking at all these terms on here, anything that I have circled you should know. Operator and equal sign, those are terms you should know for sure. And the other one is the difference. And I think all the vocabulary is important, but the word difference comes up enough that you should definitely know a difference means what is this, a subtraction, that we're asking you to do a subtraction problem. And the equal sign you should know, and the operator are just the operations, which are addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Those things are operations. So those are terminologies that you really want to know. Okay, let's move on to actually doing some subtraction. We'll start with a fresh page here. You have problems on your practice sheet for you to try, and I'm going to give you ones that are slightly different so that you have more examples to look at, but are similar in difficulty. So you have a problem starting off, it doesn't require any borrowing, something like 87 minus 25. When you're subtracting, just like with addition, you want to line your numbers up so that the ones are lined over the ones and the tens are lined over the tens. And then you're just taking away. So subtraction, also called take away. 7 minus 5, you're taking that away, you would get 2. And 8 minus 2, you would get 6 if you take 2 away from 8. How you check these by addition, which is what it asks you to do on your paper, is that I think the difference to this problem is 62. The difference is the answer to the problem. So the difference between 87 and 25 is 62. But I can now check it by adding. And what I add are the subtrahend and the difference, and I should get the minuend if I add those two parts. So my addition, my check, is this part that's in the red here, and I'm going to check by adding 5 and 2 is 7, and 2 plus 6 is 8. Notice that when I add the subtrahend and the difference, I get the minuend, and that's the check. By adding those two pieces, you should get the minuend, or the number that you started with. So the answer to this problem is the difference, and that is this red number right here. What I did in red was the check to that problem. So I'm asking you on your homework to find the difference, but then also check. And then either circle your answer or write it again at the bottom or something to show this is the actual answer to this problem, so that a lot of times when people grade a paper, they'll look at the bottom of your work, and if they see 87, they go, what? So you need to make sure that you're showing the answer in a circle or square like I did. Okay, the next problem you have does require some borrowing. So something like 347 minus 97. This is another problem, 3 digits, and I noticed that I lined up the ones, I lined up the tens, and then the hundreds, there was only one with the hundreds in there. When I take 7 away from 7, that's all of it, so I'm going to get 0 for that. Now I want to take 9 away from 4, but I can't do it because I don't have enough in the tens column to take 9 away. I've got 9 tens, I'm trying to take it away from 4 tens, and that's when I start to borrow. When I borrow, I'm going to take one of these hundreds, because I have 3 100s. I'm going to take one and I'm going to leave 2 behind. So now instead of the 3, I have 2 100s. And of the 100s that I borrow, I'm going to add one of those hundreds onto this. So I'm going to add that. And so now my 3 became 200s and 100, which adds up to 300, but I'm looking at it differently. Now I have the 1 and the 4 add together in 14, and that gives me 5. 14 minus 9 is 5. And then 2 minus nothing is 2. This is my difference, I think. I'm just going to abbreviate it with diff. But now I'm going to go back and check it. And I'm going to be checking in, I'm going to try to remember to check in red, and I'm just going to show you that what I'm adding, again, is the difference and that subtrahend, and I should get the minuend when I add that. 7 plus 0 is 7. 9 plus 5, excuse me, 9 plus 5 is 14. And 2 plus 1, excuse me, is 3. And notice that I got 347, which is what I had up there, 347. So I feel confident that I got this one right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a circle or a square around my answer so that it's more obvious that that was the answer to my problem, and below that was just the check. Okay, let's see if I can clear this screen, and we'll go on and do a few more. The next one definitely requires some borrowing. I have something like 700, and I'm subtracting something like 564. So in this case, I want to take 4 away from 0, and I can't do it. And I want to take the 6, so I can't borrow from the next one over because there's a 0 there as well. What I want to do is, right now I have 700s. I want to rewrite that as 600 plus another 100. That's still 700. So what I'm going to do when I borrow is I'm going to subtract one of these hundreds. I'm going to make that 6. But because I have 2 places to the right of that I'm borrowing, I have to break that up into parts. So what I'm going to do is give this 100 is what I have left that I'm still got over here. That's where that is. But now I have to break this other 100 up. And how the other 100 is going to go is I'm going to give 90 to the first column, and I'm going to give 10 to the second column. So that 100 is broken up into 90 and 10. So over here, I'm going to say instead of 0 tens, I have 9 tens. That's where I gave that. And then over here, instead of having 0, I'm going to give 1 10 to that. 90 and 10 makes up 100. So I took the 100 that I borrowed and I broke it up into the parts, and now I'm ready to subtract. This one I should have written 10 because I gave it not just 1, but I gave it 10, right? So now I'm going to have 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 6 is 3. And 6 minus 5 is 1. And that, I believe, is my difference. I'm going to check it by adding together my difference and my subtrahend. 4 and 6 is 10, and I carry the 1. 6 and 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, and I carry the 1. 5, 6, 7, 100. So what I did was I took 100 and I gave some to the 10s and I gave some to the 1s, and then I was able to subtract. Notice that I ended up with 700. 700 was what I started with, so that's my correct difference then, and I'm going to circle that and show that that's the answer to that problem. And borrowing can get a little tricky, so you really have to slow down and think about what you're doing. It's okay to write off to the side like I did. Let's do another one. This one might look like this. 5,008 minus 6,200 or 600, excuse me, 627. Okay, so for this problem, I can subtract 7 from 8 and get 1, no problem. And now I'm going to have to borrow, and again I'm going to have to borrow to 2 places because I have 2 zeros there that I need to borrow for. So what I have over here is I have 5,000, and I'm going to rewrite that as 4,000 plus 1,000. Now that, when I slash that, it's going to become 4,000. That 4,000 is what I have left after I borrow 1. Now I'm going to break up this 1,000 to go to the hundreds and the tens. So I'm going to give 900 to the hundreds place, and I'm going to give 100 to the tens place. So 100 would be 10 tens, right? So what it looks like is I have 10 here, and I have 9 here, 9 hundreds, and then 10 tens, which is 100 for the second one. So I make 10 to the far right and 9 next. Now I'm ready to subtract the rest of that. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 6 is 3. And I bring the 4 straight down. And I think that that's my difference. Quick check to make sure to add these two together. 7 and 1 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. 6 and 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. And adding 1 up here, I get 5. And that's what I started with, 5,008. So that's what makes me think that I did this correctly. And 4,381 would be my difference. All right. Remember, you can always pause the video, try your problem on your worksheet, come back, see me work it again. The ones that I do on the film are so similar to the ones that you can follow them pretty close. And pause it if you need to see the screen longer. If I'm going too fast, you can slow it down. You can speed the video up if I'm going too slow. All right, the last one that I have on there is looks like 6,400 minus 2,337. So I'm going to again borrow over 2 places. I can't subtract 7 from 0. Remember, I'm going to borrow from that 400. So I had 400, I'm going to write that as 300 and 100. The 300 is what I'm going to have left after I take that 100 away. The 100 I'm going to break up into 90 and 10. This gives me 9 tens, and I have 1 10 here, and so it's 10 ones. A 10 is 10 ones, so it looks like 10 to the far right, then 9s, and so forth. Working down here, 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. I didn't borrow anything from that 6, so I didn't change that. So that's just 6 minus 2 is 4. That, I believe, is the difference. I don't always write difference, but I'm writing that here, and it wouldn't hurt for you to write that because it's good to get to know that word and know what you're talking about. When you subtract, when you add these up to check, 7 plus 3 is 10. 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. 3 plus 1 is 4, and 4 plus 2 is 6, so you get 6,400. So that is correct then, and I'm going to circle my answer, at least my answer. You don't have to circle the word difference, but at least circle your answer so it's obvious to a grader what you're looking at. One of the things about subtraction and addition, they're like opposites. So you can take any subtraction problem and you can write it as an addition problem. You can take any addition problem and write it as a subtraction problem. So for instance, let's say I have 10 minus 6 equals 4. If I ask you to rewrite that as an addition problem, you would rewrite it as 4 plus 6 equals 10. Because just like we did here, we can add to check. If you add your difference and your subtrahend, you always get your minuend. So you're just rewriting that. If I gave you this problem, 12 equals 7 plus 5, and I asked you to rewrite that as a subtraction problem, you could rewrite that a few ways. You could say 12 minus 7 equals 5. That would be a different, using the same numbers but different operator. Or you could say 12 minus 5 equals 7. And it's just important to understand the relationship that they're opposites. And because addition and subtraction sort of do the opposite thing, that's why you can check subtraction with addition. And so on your practice sheet, I do ask you to rewrite a subtraction problem into addition form, a couple of them, just so you practice that. So that's that skill that I'm looking for on that sheet. Okay. Let's take a look at the word problem that I put on your subtraction practice sheet. The first one says the peak of Mount McKinley. Notice here, I should read the directions. That is a common mistake students make, and I just made it too. I just jump down and want to work the problem. I don't want to read the instructions. Well, if I read the instructions, it says solve the word problems, but it also says circle the words or phrases that tell you to subtract. We're working in a subtraction work problem, so we have subtraction problems, but pretty soon you're going to have a worksheet with word problems that are all mixed in, and you have to be able to recognize when are you adding, when are you subtracting, when are you multiplying, when are you dividing. So this one says the peak of Mount McKinley in Alaska is 20,320 feet above sea level. The peak of Mount Katahdin in Maine is 5,267 feet above sea level. How much higher is the peak of Mount McKinley than Mount Katahdin's peak? How much higher? How much higher? That's what we're talking about, the difference. What's the difference in heights? It doesn't say difference, but that's what it's suggesting, how much higher. So I'm circling that word. Now, when I subtract, I want to put the greater number as my minuend because we're not into negative numbers yet. And anyway, in this case, it would just be a positive number that we want. So Mount McKinley has the higher sea level, is higher above sea level. So I'm going to put that first, 20,320, and then that's my minuend. My subtrahend is going to be what happened? My subtrahend is going to be 5,000 267, and now I have to all right, may not be great to be using this as my writing tool. Let's go over and do this on the other form because I'm not really sure what's happening there. The peak was 20,320 for Mount McKinley, and it was 5,267 for Mount Katahdin. And now I'm just going to subtract those two, and when I do, I have to borrow, and I don't have enough without borrowing, so I'm going to borrow this 10, I'm going to leave 1 behind, and I'm going to make this 10 instead. So now I have 10 plus another 10, that's 20 that I borrowed. Sorry, 10 that I borrowed and 10 that's left over, which I started with 20 altogether, excuse me. So now if I subtract 10 minus 7, I get 3. But now look what the problem is. Now I can't take 6 away from 1, so I have to borrow again. So I'm going to borrow from the 3, take that 3 and make it 2, and I have now 100, which I'm going to give 10 tens, which is 100, over here and make that 11. 11 minus 6 is 5. 2 minus 2 is 0. And now notice that I have to borrow again because I don't have enough in the thousands place to take the 5 away. So I'm going to borrow 1,000, and I'm going to make this 10. And now I'm ready to subtract. So now I'm ready to subtract, and I can. 10 minus 5 is 5, and I don't have anything to subtract here, so I just get 1. So I have 15,053. I think that is my difference. I'm going to check it. And 7 plus 3 is 10. 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 1 is 12. Carry that. 2 plus 1 is 3. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. I get 20,320, which is what I started with, which makes me decide that I have the correct answer here, and my difference is 15,053. All right. Let me see if I can open that program, that Word document back up so we can look at the problem. You should have printed it off too. So that you could see it as I'm working the problems, you could see it also. I'm not going to write on here because obviously it's not working very well for me, but I want to read the problem with you and circle at least the thing that says why would we be using subtraction. The new iPhone 5 with 64 gigabytes costs $399. Ha Young has $812 in her savings account. How much will she have left in her saving account if she buys the iPhone 5? So all I have to do here is say, well, how much will she have left? When you say leftover or left, that indicates subtraction. So that's what I know is what we're doing. We're subtracting because we have that left. Now remember that you want to have a positive number, so you want the greater number to be your minuend and the smaller number to be your subtrahend. So let's write this then. The iPhone cost $399, but what she has in her account is $812, and the iPhone is $399. What you should do is do this problem without my help, making sure you can do it, and then come back and see if you did it correctly. Hopefully you pause this and then you come back. So I'm going to have to borrow. I don't have enough to take 9 away from 2, so I have to borrow. I'm going to borrow from this. Now I have 0 of those left because I'm giving them all to the ones place. Now I can say 12 minus 9 is 3, but now I can't take 9 away from 0, so I have to borrow again. So now I have to say I'm going to borrow one of these, which leaves 7, and I'm going to give 10 hundreds to the tens. 10 tens is 100. Now I can do 10 minus 9 is 1, and 7 minus 3 is 4. And $413 is what I think that she would have left in her account, and that would be the difference between those two numbers. How do you check it? Well, I just spelled difference wrong, so let me fix that. Sometimes I can't talk and write at the same time. I check it by addition. I'm going to add these two numbers together to make sure that they come back to what I thought they should. 9 plus 3 is 12. Carry the 1. 9, 10, 11. Carry the 1. 3 plus 4, 7 plus 1 is 8. $812. That's what I had to start with. That means that I did correctly find the difference between those two numbers. She would have $413 left in her bank account if she decided to buy that phone. All right, the next problem I do want to look at on screen because I want you to see the graph and see kind of what I'm talking about here. One of the things you have to be able to do as you go through math is to read graphs and charts. This particular graph is a bar graph because it has bars, and it's called a vertical bar graph because the bars are going up and down. If the bars were going left and right, they would be a horizontal bar graph. Sometimes bar graphs are called histograms because it's just another word for a bar graph. When I made this graph chart, I went ahead and put the population numbers in so you could see exactly. Sometimes you might see a graph that just says the bars but doesn't have the number above it, and so you would look at that and you would say Missouri has about 6 million for the population. It tells us population in the key to the graph. So right there we know it's population, and then we know the different states down here. So I know that Missouri has about 6 million people, but even more specifically for our graph, we know it has exactly 6,010,688 people, if you read that number correctly. So the question on this problem, the first one, is just which state has the smallest population? And of course, the smallest population here is going to be Nebraska. It's the one with the shortest bar. That's the smallest population. Plus, you can look at the numbers and tell that's definitely smaller than the other one. So Nebraska's got the smallest population. Doesn't mean it's the smallest state. It just means that Nebraska's got a lot of farmland, so there's a lot of people who live on many, many acres for a few people. Okay, so the answer then is it's Nebraska, and then write the population of that state in written notation. Remember back a couple of lessons ago, we're having you write that in written notation. So that means instead of just writing down 1,842, I'm wanting you to write it out in words, and that would be 1,842,641. So you would practice writing that on your own. There's a second question here that says, what is the difference in population between Missouri and Kansas? Looking for that key word, difference is our key word. That's the word that would suggest that we would subtract. It's right there. It says difference. You know when you want to find a difference to something that you would subtract. So we want to find the difference in population between Missouri and Kansas. Which number would go as our minuend and which one is our subtrahend? Right, Missouri has to be the minuend because it's the greater number, and we don't want to get into negatives, so we want to make sure we put the greater number as a minuend and the smaller number as the subtrahend. So let's see over here, let's write this problem out and see what it looks like. If you have that still in front of you, that's great. You should have printed it off and have it in front of you as you watch these videos. You can make your notes right on there, which is nice. Okay, Missouri was 6,010,688, while Kansas, which is the other one we were supposed to find the difference between, is 2,871,838. So that's the populations of those two states that I found on a website somewhere, and that's the as of the 2010 census. So pretty accurate. And now we're just ready to subtract that. 8 minus 8 is 0. 8 minus 3 is 5. Here I cannot subtract 8 from 6. If I look one to the right, I can't borrow from that one either. So I have to borrow over 2, which turns that into a 0. What happens when I borrow 2? Remember, this is a 10,000s place. If I borrow one of those, I don't have any left. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 9,000 to the thousands place, so that becomes a 9, and I have to give the other 1,000 to the hundreds place, and that is 10 hundreds. So I give it, whoops, I already had 6. Made a mistake there. So I already had 6 and I gave it 10, so I have 16 there, not 10. So that's what happens. That 10,000 became 9,000 and 1,000, and I added on to those columns. Now I'm going to subtract. 16 minus 8 is 8. 9 minus 1 is 8. And by the way, I'm doing that subtraction in my head. I know 16 minus 8 is 8. I've been doing math for a long time, and I do it every day, and I'm pretty good at it. You may not be as good at it. You may not be able to do that in your head. It doesn't mean that you can't do math. It may mean that you need to count it on your fingers or put it on a piece of paper and do marks or whatever. You can get there, maybe differently than I do, but you can still get there. So don't think, well, because I can't do that stuff in my head, then I can't do it. Very few people do math for 25 years daily. And so the people that do it are doing these videos. It looks like woo, 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 we're just going right through here. That may not be you. That doesn't have to be you. It never has to be you. You can get a college degree or a high school diploma or whatever you want to do and never be able to do a bunch of math in your head. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you find a way to get that answer, that you can get there. And so don't be intimidated. That one of the things that people tend to think is that some people just can do math and some people can't do math. And I don't believe that. I think some people are good at math and it comes easy to them, just like some people can run a mile faster than I could. But it doesn't mean that I can't eventually run a mile if I work at it, right? So just remember, work hard, you can get there. Okay, now I can't borrow 7. I can't borrow from the 0, and I'm having to look 2 over to do that. So I'm going to borrow from the 6, and I'm going to let 5. The next number to the right, I'm going to give 9 hundred thousands to that, and I'm going to give 10 thousands, which is 100,000, to that another one. So it always becomes 10 and 9 and then 10 to the very end. Now I'm going to say 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 8 is 1, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So I think the difference in population between Kansas and Missouri is 3,138,850 people. Doesn't take very long, and I would like you to get in the habit of doing a quick check and seeing if it comes out right. 8 plus 0 is 8. 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 plus 8 is 16. 8, 9, 10. Carry the 1. 7 and 3 is 10 plus 1 is 11. 8, 9, 10. Carry the 1. 3, 4, 5, 6. 6,010,688 is the population of Missouri. That's what I started off with. So that leads me to believe that the answer to this question is that. So you have to be able to read the graph to answer the questions, and then you have to be able to do the math to answer the question. So that has kind of a couple different parts in there. Let me write down some keywords for subtraction that would indicate that you're going to subtract. If they say difference, of course, you're going to do that. Sometimes they'll say she used to make 50,000, but they decreased her salary by 9,000. What is she making now? If they say decrease, then that's a subtraction problem. If they ask what's left over or remaining, like there was 75 feet of rope, somebody cut 30 feet off, how much is remaining, or what's left over after they did that, those are all subtraction words. What else is a good subtraction word? I'm trying to think. Difference, leftover. All right, well, if I think of more, I'll throw them out there at you. But those are just some of the ones that when you're doing word problems, you sort of look for. Okay, let's do the last two problems on your practice sheet, and then we'll end for the day. So the practice sheet has a couple of problems that are asking you to find the difference, find the difference of 5,002 and 2,654. When you say the word difference, the number that you say first has got to be the minuend, and the number you say second has got to be the subtrahend. So because I'm saying it this way, I need to write it that way. So 5,002 is my first number. That looks like 5,002. That's going to be my minuend. The second number was 2,754. 2,754. So part of this problem is being able to write a number in standard form, given it in written form, and then know that a difference means subtract, and then line them up, and then do the problem. So there's a lot of different parts to this. So now I'm going to borrow, because I can't take 4 away from 2, but there's nothing in the tens place to borrow, there's nothing in the hundreds place, so I'm borrowing all the way over here at the thousands place. And so I had 5,000, and I'm going to have 4,000 left, and I'm going to take that other 1,000 and I'm going to break it up into these parts. I'm going to give 900, I'm going to give 90 to the tens, and I'm going to give 10 to the ones. 900 plus 90 plus 10 is just another way to say 1,000. So I'm going to give 9 hundreds, 9 tens, and 10 ones. And again, I did the same mistake of writing 10 there when I should have written 2. Because I already had a 2 and I put 10 there, so I've got 12 altogether. Okay, now I'm ready to subtract. 4 from 12 is 8. 9 minus 5 is 4. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 4 minus 2 is 2. That's what I believe to be the difference. Somehow I'm not spelling difference very easily today. Believe me, I have spelled that word many times correctly. Alright, difference. Then my check. I'm going to add those together. 8 and 4 is 2. Is 12. Carry the 1. 9 and 5 and 4 is 9. Plus 1 is 10. 7 and 2 is 9. Plus 1 is 10. 2 plus 2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. 5,002. You're going to notice as I make these videos, because there's a bunch of them that you may be watching, that I make mistakes as I go through. It's okay to make mistakes in math. If you check it, you find your mistakes. If you say something incorrectly and you fix it, it's okay. I don't go back and edit these so that there's no mistakes in them, because I want you to see nobody's perfect. When you make a mistake in math, you learn something from that. It's good to make mistakes. Sometimes hard to make good mistakes. But sometimes when you make a mistake, you learn more than when you do it correctly. So don't be afraid to try math, and know that sometimes you will make mistakes. And you'll find it when you check it, or if you don't bother to check it, your teacher will find it when she checks it or he checks it, and then you'll learn from that. So please don't be intimidated by that. Sometimes you just make mistakes. Okay, so we started off with 5,002, we ended up with 5,002, so the difference for our problem was 2,248. Let's look back at the other problem. Remember, this one said, find the difference of. And so when you say it that way, when you say find the difference of, I don't know how to get rid of that now. Anyway, when you say find the difference of 5,002 and 2,754, the word difference requires that you then put the first number first. The first number they say is the minuend, and the second number is your subtrahend. But when you say subtract, then it's different. Because now on number 15, I'm saying subtract 600,299 from 1,001,001. 1 million is a bigger number than 600,000. So obviously we want to put that 1 million first. But if you were working with negative numbers, you wouldn't know that unless you knew that when you're saying subtract this thing from this thing. So this first number you said in this case is going to be your subtrahend, and the last number is going to be your minuend. So let's go work that out on the smartboard. I'm going to write those down. We have 1,001,001. Let's put a line here so we know that we're done with that one. 1,001,001, and we're subtracting 600,299. That's going to require borrowing on the top. And so when I borrow, I can't borrow from the tens or the hundreds. I'm going to have to jump all the way over to the thousands to borrow. That's going to give me 0. That's going to make that 9. It's going to make that 9. It's going to make that 11 because I add 9, 9, and then 10 to the end. 11 minus 9 is 2. 9 minus 9 is 0. 9 minus 2 is 7. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. I cannot take 6 away from 0, so I am borrowing. That becomes 0, and this becomes 10 because I'm only giving it to one thing. It gets all 10 of them. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now I have 0 millions, so I don't have anything left there. I'm going to check this. I think this is my difference. But I'm going to check it out. And adding that up, 9 and 2 is 11. Carry the 1. 9 and 1 is 0. Carry the 1. 7 and 2 is 9, plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. 0 plus 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 0 plus 0 is 0. 6 plus 4 is 10. And so I have 1,001,001, which is what I started with, which makes me believe that I correctly found that as my difference. All right, so what I want you to be able to do with subtraction is to know the terminology, minuend, subtrahend, difference, still knowing equal sign or equality symbol, the operator or the operation, be able to subtract with or without borrowing, and be able to find the key words in a subtraction problem like difference or leftover or remaining, those numbers that tell you that it's subtraction. And then read a graph to be able to answer questions about a graph. Rewrite a subtraction problem as an addition problem. And then take a problem in written form and turn it into standard notation and then do the subtraction, knowing which is the minuend and which is the subtrahend. All right, have a great day. I'll see you next time here on the videos. Thanks.